Well, good morning, folks. We hope we're in front of the house of Sujata Shah. We have an address, and there's a beautiful house here, and there's some beadwork over the doorway. We think we're here. She doesn't know we're here yet. She's invited us. What do you have to say about all of this there?
It's beautiful. Her gardens are beautiful. The sun is shining. We are going to have a beautiful day being inspired by Sujata's beautiful art today. I'm so excited.
Good morning. We're already filming. Is that a bad thing?
Oh my God, no, go ahead.
Sujata, so wonderful.
Oh my goodness.
Have you met my friend Charisma?
I have not had
Here, let me do this so that you may introduce yourself.
Please.
I'm Charisma.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
After I talked with Rob, I went up and looked at your barn.
Oh, thank you.
Right?
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
She has
it
got
was
the
amazing.
best barn for quilting ever.
Beautiful. Please.
Right.
come
Will do.
on.
Okay.
Hi, Sujata. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today from beach to barn. And we're here today to just kind of discover your creative process and what makes you happy. We just want to get to know you. So would you like to share some things with us today?
Yes. First of all, thank you. Thank you for calling me and asking to be part of this adventure that you are going on. My creative practice, I think it's my brain. It's, I always need something to be doing with my hands. When I was younger, I used to draw and do lots of crafts that was part of the school program and all that. Once I moved to the United States, I missed that, and I didn't have it in my life for a long time, and neither did I have colors. I moved from India, which is really just, if you can imagine, just bright pop of color. If there was a color to be seen other than the natural colors from the top, I think India would be the most colorful country that you would see from space, in my humble opinion. And so I missed colors, and a friend introduced me to quilting, doll making, all that stuff, and that's where I began, this journey. Traditionally, we live with color, as I said, in the kitchen. We wear colorful clothes. If you go to the markets, if you see other people, nobody wears black unless somebody's died. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm just kind of, and nobody wears white unless they are attending some peaceful ceremony, and that's also true with somebody's death. So yes, in summertime we do wear white, but we would still have colorful jewelry or something, accessories. That's right. Thank you. So colors are really part of your life. If you're not wearing, somebody else is wearing. So it's in your view. You go out and you see so many people wearing colors, and go to the markets and you see all these shops of fabrics and outfits, clothing and all that. Even the fruit stand or the vegetable stand is just colorful. You must go to India sometimes.
Yes.
So I've tried in my past, making quilts with gray tones and white background and all that. So far, I haven't been successful.
It's not natural for you. You don't like that.
No. It's in my brain. It's ingrained in me. I live with color in here, and so whenever I go into my stash, all I can pull out is color. And that's where.
And that's a beautiful thing. I think us seeing the world in color is part of the passion, right? So in your creative process, now that you know what you do and do not like, when you go into your studio, what just makes you the happiest to start a project? Do you just start pulling colors first? Do you have an image in your mind? Do you just see I have these little bits here, or what is that process for you?
So everything I do, all of the above, first of all, everything I do mostly comes from my visual experiences. So a texture that I may have seen somewhere, a pattern, even that pattern could be on a tree trunk, or it could be some textural object that I have in my house, and maybe just a tiny little motif from that particular big textural object that I may have, something that invites me to explore more. And so then I think about that, and then I think about how I would replicate that pattern with my scissors or rotary cutter, and do it. So mostly I don't make patterns. I don't follow traditional patterns. If I did, I find my own way of interpreting those patterns.
Here, what I want to show you was these free-form blocks, and you go like, well, I didn't make that the right size. You just put a strip of the background. Because it's improv, and they're not, it's not all the same size. You somehow have to make up for that lost, the space that's, so right, I have one here, I have blue over here, and it's not even the same fabric. But
Sure.
If I had not mentioned this, you would have never noticed that, hey, there's a patchwork over there. That's a spacer in between. So,
as far as colors are concerned, I live a very Indian life in the house. And we are blessed. I think those of us who have immigrated to this country, I think we're blessed because we have the experience of both. We have our our heritage, we have our experiences in our native country, and then you come to this place and you see new things, and that just kind of creates a fusion. At least that's what it did in my case. American influence, I would say, is in 2003 and 4. I actually don't remember the exact year. I should go back and look at it. 2 books simultaneously came into my life. One was The Quilters of Gee's Bend, that everybody really was excited about and still is. And the second one was Raleigh Quilts of India and Pakistan. And these 2 books, so I had this quilts that I saw from home, and then the Quilts of Gee's Bend. And the very first time in my head, I was thinking that I was closer to my home country than I was here, in spite of me living here, because the Quilts of Gee's Bend and these quilts from India, they both validated my constant feeling of, I don't want to do precise quilting. I don't want my quilt to look like a photograph or a tapestry. I want my hands telling a story. I want my mindset and my hands telling a story. So inspirations came from both countries. They combined, and then I made them my own, my patterns and all.
So we'll get to, we've gone through the creative process, what has inspired you, how your environments in both countries have inspired you. When you hit that creative block, how do you get out of that creative block?
Okay, so I have a very different, or at least this is my way of looking at it. To accept what comes in life rather than fighting it, rather than struggling with it. We as an artist, we work really hard. It's quite a competitive industry, especially for those of us who are professionally pursuing it. So, and if you go on Pinterest or Instagram or any other social media, you are bombarded with all these images, and of course, as a novice, maybe you want to make, I want to make that quilt, that quilt, that quilt, that quilt. But we all know, I know, you can't possibly make everything that you want to make, and you cannot possibly spend so much time doing, although it is exciting, doing the same thing. You got to change it up. I love walking. I love going to the nature and then forgetting about everything. It clears my mind. It actually kind of calms me down. So all the anxiety or the stress that starts with I am having a block or what, it just kind of pushed aside. And then I feel like I'm one with nature. My body, my mind, everything is one with nature. And in that moment, it may not happen right away. It may not happen in a day or 2. Sometimes it's a month. Sometimes I have the other problem. I have way too many ideas and I don't have enough time. So I'm not rushing my quilt just because I want to go to the next idea, next step. That's mass production. Even though I'm making by hand, it's mass production. So I don't go there. I have just given myself a permission. There is no deadline for anything. And I have all the time in the world to finish one project. In that moment that I feel like I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this. And then everything else is forgotten. That creative block or that excitement of 6 other quilts that somebody else has made. This is going to be my own original idea.
I think that's the part.
You're gonna put oh, that's right. In your last shopping experience, Sujata, Charisma has not been to a market since before Christmas.
Seriously?
And so she wants to push the cart. She wants to put it all through the self-checkout. Exactly. So I am so interested in these curry leaves. I didn't, yeah, this was my new, we've been teasing Charisma about not realizing artichokes actually grow as a plant out of the ground.
So
And curry is my thing here. Go ahead.
There is no such thing as curry leaves.
Oh,
I'm going to break the
you're gonna break the spell, huh?
curry is mixture of all this, some of the spices. And let me actually, I mean, they're just like mix of all the spices. And that is curry powder.
Oh, okay.
Curry is what you make out of it. So it's a base of, say, onion and tomatoes. And whenever it's liquid form or semi-solid form, that's when it's a curry, because it's got the powder, the mixed blend of spices.
Got it.
And then it's made into a curry. In India, we don't eat with 2 hands. We only eat with 1 hand.
Okay.
So we never have like 2 hands and, food like that. And then we are basically, you open that up and then make a little bit of boat like this.
Okay.
And so you get a chunk of your
Vegetables?
vegetables in it. And so either if you want to dip it in your dal, you can, or you just eat it just like that.
Okay.
So Sujata, one of my very favorite memories of you is when we were having coffee. Remember, we were at Sisters Outdoor Quilt Show,
Yes.
right? And was it Heather Jones that was with us?
Heather
Okay.
was with us.
Yeah, so we snuck away in the middle of the quilt show to go get some coffee, and we were sitting upstairs, and I remember you had these photographs from the students from your workshops, I think, throughout the week.
Right.
And you were so excited because those, and if I remember correctly, so I'm going to ask you to kind of retell the story, but it was really young ladies that were really great at being in the here and now. And I think what you were so excited about was, or trying to explain to me, and I didn't get it because you had to keep trying to re-explain it and re-explain it and re-explain it, is that sometimes we get too much training. We get too much of what we think we're supposed to be doing. So even our best organic is still way too staged.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. This is the best memory I have of Sisters. I mean, there are many, but this is one of the best ones. This girl was about 12 or 13 at the time.
Right.
And she came with her mom
Right.
to my class. And it was the windmill class, which is here on the wall, you
Okay.
see, right?
Perfect
Right there.
timing. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And was just, maybe this was her second year taking a class. She'd been coming
Right.
second or third year taking the class. And I had 19 other students. Now her blogs, knowing that she was still in training, she once looked at my demo and she went for it. She just went and then made her blogs. And then everybody else, if it was slight little crooked than what they had expected or what I had done, they were trying to correct that. How do I do this or that or whatever? Where this young woman was just having fun. Ultimately, what happened at the end of the class day, she had tons of blocks made because she didn't need any more instructions. She was just going with her heart. She was following her gut. And I feel that as we make more quilts,
we become a little more careful, become more cautious about how the block ultimately is going to look. And we are already thinking that instead of actually even trying new things, because what stops us from doing that is because you've already seen the final version. And your hope is that, oh, I hope I get that.
Okay, I know you're dying to show me improv.
Yes.
I'm just gonna get out of the way so that you can
Okay.
just pretend like we're not here, if you
Okay,
will.
sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so what's happening here is I have 4 squares and I have cut them the same size or not. Look, this one is a little bit smaller, or I still have salvage on there, which I technically you don't want them, but I do have them. I'm arranging them in, sort of bright and dark, value wise. You don't have to do that. We're going to create a windmill block, which is this block right here. And the cutting is the most fun part for me. And so I'm going to show you what I do as far as cutting these layers are concerned. Now, one thing about the windmill blocks, if I have only 2 squares, let's say, and I cut them simultaneously, then I'll get the opposite of the blocks, so meaning I will have orange in the center in one block and then orange on the side on the other block, but the color combination will remain the same. So now watch what I do. I stack them on top of each other, aligning as best as you can, and then take your rotary cutter and then just give it a go. So I hold on to my fabrics just to set them down. Sometimes I actually go on the ironing board and I press them with steam, so that what happens is it temporarily glues the 4 pieces together so they don't shift on you.
I notice you're using solids. Oh,
Yes.
thank you for closing your rotary
Yes.
cutters. Now I can get closer. Okay, so you're using solids.
Yes.
If you were using prints, would they all be right sides up right now?
Yes, thank you for that question. I always forget, because you know how it is. Again, that conditioned mind that we are talking about. We are so used to what we do that we forget that there are tricks that you need to
I like
remember.
organic curve piecing, and the trick I try to communicate with everybody is
Right.
both pieces are right sides up, so that you're
Yes.
actually cutting the curve that you'll be sewing in
Yes.
the long run.
And just because you're using solid doesn't mean that you can flip them all over. It still matters, because the curve is what you need to have it
I
together.
understand. Perfect,
So if
I
you
understand.
flip it, then you messed up.
You're creating a
You'll end
different
up-
pattern.
you-
You're making a different pattern.
Yes, or you're gonna end up straightening out way too much time, So, anyways, take your rotary cutter and then I just go as if I'm driving. So I'm not looking at my rotary cutter, but I'm looking where I want to be.
Okay.
So there is a really gentle organic curve. Now watch this. On the other side, when I go, I want to mimic this, but sometimes it doesn't happen, and sometimes I just don't want it to happen. So I'm going to go a little farther. And here we have, the stack cut in layers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the top, this windmill blade, let's call it, and then lift it up and put it at the bottom. So I've got the new combination of block to sew. So what's going to happen is when I end up sewing the curve, I'm going to start piecing these 2 pieces of all of the entire stack, start chain piecing it. Okay, so
Okay.
this goes on top of here, like right sides together. This pink, purplish pink will go right sides together on this slate blue, and the brown will go on the purple, right sides together. You're gonna piece that, and then the last one is gonna be this. So watch this now. You got, instead of 2, because you had 4, the combination is different for all of the blocks. And simply once they are sewn together, would you rather me showing you how to sew them? Or
However you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you piece them together, just the background piece. So the next comes this orange. You just chain piece it and then stay on the machine. Cut one at a time So then you've got 4 blocks.
So you're still matching up the outside colors so that they're the same.
Right,
But-
and that's an option.
I was asking,
But
you could technically because of the cut.
You could change it because the cut is the same.
Right, that makes
So
sense.
yeah, you can interchange and you can have a completely different work on there. So that's what it is, and those are the ones that make 4 different blocks. So when you have, say, 48 blocks, you will not even be able to trace the combination of the stack because they get scattered all over the quilt. And so this is called windmill block, and it's in the book Cultural Fusion Quilts, published by CMT Publishers. So that's and then once the pieces, let me actually show you.
I was going to ask,
Yes,
can we sew one together?
Let me show you that.
Perfect.
And
Because there is a slight
technique.
curve to it.
Yes, and there is a technique to be
Yeah.
followed as far as the
Oh yeah, let's see it
curve
then.
piecing is concerned.
Perfect.
So let me just start with the first one.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick this one up, and then what I do normally is I match these points. Now this is the only time I use the word match. So what I do is, because the curve is that unique curve, and so the only way to actually sew this line in harmony is to start from where it began. So at this point, I'm going to turn my fabric right sides together and then pick that up and go to the machine. And here, what I'm going to do is place that under the presser foot, and first few stitches you just want them straight. So that's why it's also important that you don't cut your curve too deep, because then you'll end up with a really pointy little beginning of that, or one fabric, and that's not something you want. So stitch 4 or 5 stitches so that you have caught the bottom fabric. And then here's a tip for all the sewers. What I do is I like to see the bottom fabric just a little bit of sliver. I'm lifting the left hand fabric in my left hand, and the right one is at the bottom. So basically you want a chain piece, and I like to see this little bit of orange, so it kind of tells me that I am catching that fabric as I'm sewing the curve.
I love that trick.
And the next one, I'm gonna go ahead and sew on 4.
You can make your quilt, Sujata. We'll just record and come back. Don't you worry about us here.
Okay, all
Remember,
right.
you're pretending like we're not here, so just go ahead and make your quilt.
I
today.
am just gonna go ahead and sew it.
We're not going anywhere till
All
tomorrow.
right, that's good to know. This is a really cool technique that I have found. It not only allows me to make traditional quilts, but also intra quilts. You basically treat those pieces like they're straight edges, so you don't really have to think too much. If it's a gentle curve, you're not going to really think that, oh my gosh, whether it's coming together or not. It does. It ends up coming. Okay, so the next thing is, once you have sewn them together, I just take one cut at a time, finger press the pieces. Most of the time what I like to do is move the seam away from the center. Away from the center helps, because if you have really narrow bottom, then the seams are not in your way. So that's half of the block, and then I tend to just kind of make sure that the shape is what I created and it's not upside down like this, because then it won't match. I used that word match again, but you know what I mean. I have quite a few versions of this quilt, and I still can make new versions. I get excited every time.
So this is your version of like a 9-patch for a traditional quilter? Yes.
It is, exactly. You know, I'm also not a very careful stitcher. So I don't worry about all the little imperfections that come. In fact, I feel like they actually built a character in a quilt. So my tendency always is like, if you make a quilt and if it all seen at once, like, okay, this is the pattern and this is the block, then it kind of loses the fun for me. So after 4 stitches, I pick up the top fabric in my left, and then I walk the bottom fabric with my fingers and keep moving. And that's that. So at this point, what happens is you press your block, but ultimately what you end up doing is you trimming down these squares into the size that you will get. So I can say 6.5, I can say 7 or whatever, but everybody's hand is different. And that means that their curves are going to be different. And you, as a human being, we cannot recreate this curve. You know what I mean? Because it's cut freehand. And so you want to make few sets of blocks first and then decide whether you will get a particular size out of each block or not, and then start cutting. And if you have like 1 or 2 blocks that don't fit the rest of the crowd, then just add a strip or 2 rather than cutting all of them smaller, because that, so you've got 4 blocks that let's take it to the table. So you've got 4 different blocks and they are different combination. And then trimming, I feel like this one seems like the smallest, so I am going to just kind of see what, because I used the salvage and God knows what happened. It was probably small to begin with. But I'm getting a 7-inch out of that. Ideally, you would get 7.5 at least. So you would trim the blocks down to the size that you would get from the smallest. In this case, I'd rather just not use this and then make sure that I have other, but I would make like 12 or 16 blocks and then trim them down.
Right.
To make that quilt. Yes.
So if you had some of the smaller blocks, you can either save them, I guess, for a different project, or maybe make a border or something.
Right, put it in the back, make a border.
Right.
Or my option would be to simply just take that brown fabric and then put a strip over here.
Sure.
Because then ultimately when all the blocks go together, you won't even notice. And if you notice that, oh, there's one that's floating, it adds a character to the quilt.
Right.
So I would just kind of put this strip here and then trim it down. So I would trim this much down. Let's just go ahead and do it.
I was going to ask if you've experimented with that yet, where you're
Not
putting
yet.
any kind of sashing or stripping between these.
I will show you a couple of more quilts made from this version, and I have done that. But after you trim it down like that,
Right.
put a brown strip, because this is the brown background, and so if you put it there, I have a couple of quilts that are actually on the border. I have done that. So and then use it anyway. So why waste? Again, I come from India where we recycle, upcycle, and reuse everything, and so there's a very little waste. So even in this technique, you know, if you were to do this on a curved piecing, you would have templates, and then you would have to cut them, and then whatever the waste in between would just kind of be a lot of waste.
Right.
Here, you're just trimming, and you are deciding the size. You know, how much you are getting, even though I have said that you should get that much or cut that much. you have the flexibility of the size that you want to make. So
Right.
yeah, so that's the window.
What a fun block, and easy, and
Very easy.
yeah. But
Yeah.
when you look at the final product, okay, so how much of the final product am I being influenced by all the different layers and levels of the hand stitching? And when I say that, I mean, like, so what I'm noticing is in some of these areas, the threads are very apparent because there's high contrast and then there's
Right.
low contrast.
Right.
But then you've done a lot more stitching in the background than you have in the windmills.
Yes.
But you've changed color a little. Well, have you? Yeah. No, I guess it's all the yellow.
It's all the yellows in the blades,
Okay.
and then the red in the background.
Got it, but it looks like you chose a lot of different effects. And I
Right.
guess well, why am I explaining it?
Well, I want to tell you why I did that. Yeah.
Please.
I wanted so the windmill pattern came 2 reasons. My brother and I are, he was a crafter and I was a crafter growing up. 2 of us were interested. He turned into an engineer and I'm a quilter.
You're a
But
fabric
we had
engineer.
the same, yes, exactly. You know, we like to build things and move things and sort of construct things. And so we would make these paper windmills that, you know, I don't know, I'm sure you did. When we were little, we would just, and you can drop them down and they would just go like the maple tree seedlings that would just fall and then just spin around. So we used to do this. And secondly, the 2 things that affect, and that's why it's cultural fusion for me. We lived in Pennsylvania for 8 years before we moved to Pleasanton here. And so my husband's family lived in the Amish country and we would drive over there and all that. And every farm over there would have the windmill. And so when I was working with this pattern, it was these 2 things were always in my mind that, oh, that's, you know, that's really cool that it spins and all that. And by doing this, the movement that I can create by spreading the fabrics around without even thinking, because the quilt becomes balanced, first of all, because the color that is here is also in another block somewhere else.
Sure, okay.
Right? And so this is just one set, but then when it moves around on a quilt, it creates balance because it makes your eyes move, sort of like the movement of the windmills that happen. So that is one thing. Quilting, I really wanted the windmills to pop. And so if I quilted all of it with the same density, then they won't, because the quilt generally tends to then look the same texture. So why I created different textures in the quilt is because, you know, first of all, I wanted to show the movement. And so I feel like, okay, you know, you cannot see the same combination, first of all, anywhere. So if this red is matched with this blue, of course you're going to go, oh, let's find where that next red is. And you'll find that it's also with this green and it's also with this yellow. So you can really never tell it's with this blue, but you can really never tell that how did I do that. So ultimately, although the technique is this simple, it looks like I spent so much time with each individual blocks making the separation of colors.
And I realized, because when I was helping you hang up this one and I was looking at it, I kept keying into you were using 4 of the, I'm just going to call them same color combinations.
Exactly.
And for some reason, my brain was telling me that this was the structure, but this one to me seems so much more interesting.
Right.
Exactly.
I
just understand what I'm seeing.
Exactly. And I think I already mentioned the texture that I wanted the windmills to pop to reflect the Amish windmills that I had seen, and also windmills that I had created with my brother in our childhood. When we think of a bright quilt, we always think only bright colors. But that is not always true. So one thing about India, one thing that I've learned from childhood is the colors are not always bright. The background is always brown. I mean, there is dirt, there is the grays of the...
I remember this from some of the photos.
Yes.
Okay,
right?
well, go ahead. I didn't interrupt you.
No, but you are right. That is what it is. So when we look outside in India, you'll see that, for instance, if you are in the desert, the sand is always brown. And people wear bright colors, but they can't afford the new clothes all the time. So the colors are faded, but against that brown, they pop.
Wow,
Right.
of course, right.
You don't need everything bright and popping, because what happens is then you're just gonna like startled by it.
There's no resting place.
There's no resting place. Right here, there is a resting place, but then it's also the tones of the same colors that you used. And I do like that old and worn out weathered quilt look in my quilts. And so mostly I choose colors first,
Right.
or I choose the combination of gray tones as well as bright tones. And then when you all put them together, they look like a bright quilt. And also you use multiple shades of the same color, so that it looks like some of them are faded, some of them had a dye lot, and so it kind of recedes and all that. And that makes the quilt, in my opinion, livelier than just using all the bright colors.
So a lot of the texture is just from the
Just
hand stitching and the handwork and the manipulation and all of that.
Right.
That is just amazing. How much time do you get to spend sewing in a day or a week? I mean, do you get to do it almost every day?
Most of the time when I'm not traveling.
Sure.
We are actually right now in my vacation phase.
Okay.
I usually don't take any work in January and December.
Okay.
And I usually, I should say usually, but every other year I'm in India.
Okay.
In February.
Okay.
January, February. So January, February, and December I take absolutely no work. And this year I mindfully I had just decided that I'm not going to work until April.
Wonderful.
So these days my routine is I go on first thing, as soon as my husband steps out of the door, I get on my walk and I come home and then do my morning rituals and all that, and then I get in the studio. Some days about 4 to 5 hours, and then some days just a couple of hours. So it depends on what I'm working. I have my I do my mindful meditation music is on, and it kind of zones me out of the rest of the things. So it's just me.
I'm using the same technique, and I'm actually going all the way to earbuds now, so I'm not even hearing the sewing machine or anything else. I absolutely love it. I'm a big believer in that.
So that goes on, and for me, it just goes on in the background. I'm gonna try the earbuds. I should try that. Anyways, that's us.
Yay! Your arms tired yet?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have to go to the bathroom.
All right, let's start now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.